Hello and welcome to the Fibro Guy's Corner with me, your host for the post, Jess Gelders. Today with me I have my wonderful husband Jimbo Jordan, who has been kindly offered to give us an account of living with someone / loving someone with chronic pain and fatigue. I know a lot of people out there feel guilty about becoming a burden to those around them, believe they're not worthy of love, or simply worry that the line between partner and carer will become blurred. Things that often concerned me when I had a lot of symptoms. So let's get the perspective from the other side. Welcome, Jimbo.
Hello, Jess. Thank you very much for welcoming me.
First podcast on this format?
Yeah.
No, that's not what I mean.
First podcast in this house?
Yes. Normally you're used to talking about music since you're a drummer, but...
I see what you mean. Yeah. I've been involved in a few radio shows in the past, but I've never had the privilege of doing it from my own front room, so it's quite nice.
And now, today you are here to tell us about what it was like living with me when I was suffering.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain you're going to feel a little bit guarded that you're going to get in trouble if you say bad things.
Why change everything?
However, we need to give our listeners a no-holds-barred account.
Of course.
So, you get a free pass for today. You
Awesome.
can say what you want.
Tomorrow I'll be in for it.
And I will wipe it from my memory. I'll wipe it from my big book of life.
Good.
So, to start, what was it like dating, getting engaged, marrying, living with someone with chronic pain and fatigue?
It was very daunting at first. I'd never known anyone before you that had suffered with any kind of chronic pain syndrome, so learning, every day was a learning curve for me, especially having never been involved in it before, and I'm assuming it was going to be exactly the same for yourself, which is something I'd never really thought of until more recently, thinking you were going through the exact same thing, learning every day about your body, and I was learning about you, and it must have been, it's scary for you, but obviously, for myself, it was kind of weird, watching you go through all different things and finding out, especially when we started going to the hospital and getting things told us like, you one day might end up in crutches or in a wheelchair. As scary as that must have been for you, I remember I was thinking to myself, Jesus Christ, that's not what I signed up for, and it's certainly not what my wife signed up for. So, difficult at times, but I think what's key to remember is you got the people who are suffering from chronic pain syndromes, the people at the end of the day, and they don't deserve to be outcast or set aside, discarded in any kind of way. Like if you love the person, you got to keep that at the forefront of your brain the entire time. It doesn't matter what, down the line, if you did end up in a wheelchair, I'll still love you exactly the same as I loved you today. And nothing would ever change that. I can be lovey-dovey. You ever said anything about that?
So, when we did start living together, you did have to do a lot of the chores and a lot of looking after me.
What do you mean back then?
Now you do them by choice.
Oh, yeah.
Back then you had to do them.
Yeah.
Did you feel like I'd become a massive burden, or it was too overwhelming?
Not really. I think what helped me sort of in those times was remembering, I was figuring out in my head how much pain you were in, and I was kind of thinking to myself, if she's in that amount of pain, I've got to step up. So there was kind of, that element to myself where I'm thinking I'll just do everything possible that I can to make sure that you're comfortable and able to live your life as pain-free as possible without adding to it. Sometimes I did feel that way. I felt like I was making situations more stressful than they should have been. But, I was always at that in the front of my head thinking, just try and help and don't be a burden yourself, if anything. You feel like you might have been a burden to me, but I was feeling the exact same way, if I'm honest.
Oh. See, communication is key.
Exactly.
Turns out we were both feeling exactly the same thing.
Exactly.
We've made it all sound a little bit miserable. I don't think it was all doom and gloom.
Is that a Rolling Stones reference you're making there, Jess?
Not intentionally. How do you feel about that?
About you feeling like it was doom and gloom?
No, what we've said so far makes it sound like our entire relationship was all sort of doom and gloom with me being in pain and you being terrified, both of us feeling like a burden the entire time.
No, you didn't feel like that, did you? No, certainly not. I mean, there's so many other better times that we had. You know, I still treat you exactly the same way as when we first got together, and I had no idea about there being any kind of chronic pain syndrome. We just sort of went about our normal lives, and what was important to remember is you don't stop planning or booking things, like say going, like we have a long history of going to gigs, which is one of our favourite pastimes.
Yes, it is.
So we never stopped doing stuff like that. We kept on booking things in. The thing, like if it comes to the time when you're about to go out somewhere with someone who's got a chronic pain syndrome, if they turn around on the day and say, I'm not feeling up to it, you've got to accept that, and you've got to be prepared for stuff like that, because it does happen, and it's not the person's fault. It's just the way life goes sometimes. But the way that we made life as interesting as it was for us was by carrying on like nothing was happened. You know, if it did come to the day and there was a problem and we had to cancel, we just got on with it, or we'd find something else to do. I think that would be the worst thing you could possibly do, is to just sort of ground to a halt, lock yourself in your house, like many people have been recently, and experiencing that for most of your life. That'd be the most you could. I think a lot of people would probably agree now that after being locked up in their houses for such a long period of time, that you don't want to be doing that for the rest of your life. I would recommend carrying on life as normal and do the things that you want to do, and then tackle each day as it comes.
Well, as normal as you possibly can.
Exactly.
There was a lot of planning that went into these trips. A lot of contingency plans, a lot of sulking from me and not being able to just go out and join a mosh pit whenever I fancied it.
I suppose that was one of the harder points as well, is seeing what it did to you, knowing that you wanted to do these things, and then when you weren't able to, it was dealing with the aftermath of that, and to deal with you being upset with yourself. And then sometimes there'd be points where you try to say something, I'd try to say something to cheer you up, and it didn't go down well, and it would just cause problems. And
this is typical. Very true. Chronic pain can make people, me as in particular, extremely irritable and sulky.
And rightly so.
However, one thing I will say about myself is that I tend to use laughter as a coping mechanism. So when I do get very whingy, I tend to find myself a bit ridiculous and end up laughing eventually. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's a rather strange, unique experience to see someone in floods of tears followed by hysterical, maniacal laughter.
Well, I like to keep you on your toes. You never know what you're going to get.
Exactly. Every day is a new day. Going back to the original point we were talking about, there was an instance, wasn't there, where we had somebody organised some kind of birthday bash for themselves, who you'd normally be invited to straight away, and then because of the certain chronic pain syndrome decided not to invite you along.
Yes, which was very strange because I was doing really well by then. And it was very sad for me, but you don't need those kinds of people in your life, really.
It's certain things like that piss me off, and that's what wound me up most about the syndrome. So people labelling you and thinking, oh, I won't invite Jess to such and such because she won't make it. That's not the case at all. Invite the person, and if they can't make it, they'll tell you, or they'll tell you there and then, or they'll tell you on the day if they're having problems. You know, don't just automatically think, oh, I won't bother inviting someone to something. That's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, that can be a hard thing to deal with. But you tend to find out who your real friends are. I think, what is it they say? When you have an illness or chronic pain, you've friends will give you 6 months to get your shit together, and then you start losing them. But now I have the best friends in my life because they're the ones that would stand by me through anything.
You whittled them down.
I whittled them down to just my favourites.
That's all you need.
Yes. Yeah, that I did feel guilty about when we did go to gigs and things, you know, if we had to have seats or if I needed to go straight back to the hotel afterwards rather than going out drinking, or when we went to festivals and I attempted pacing.
I'll jump in right there. Certain gigs we've been to and we've had to be seated, I've been totally fine with, by the way. Some gigs now these days I'd rather have a seat than standing at the front.
Yeah, well, we are 10 years older now than when we first met.
We are.
We're middle-aged. We're officially middle-aged now, so it's slightly different.
Oh, don't say that.
I'm sorry, but it's true.
No.
So yes, there was a lot of guilt there. There was also a lot of guilt because I worried that you would worry about me when you were away. Bit of background, Jimbo is a drummer, so he goes all over the country and all over the world, playing his music. Obviously that would leave me at home alone or with the dog. Now we have the dog.
Yeah. Now we have the dog for that reason.
Yeah. Now we have the dog to keep me company. And that could be difficult for me at the time because I'd worry how I was going to look after myself. I'm assuming it was also very difficult for you.
It was a lot of the time, especially if I was going away on long periods. Like the longest stint I ever did away from you was probably, I don't know, like 8 weeks, and I'd not even... more recently it was like 2015 where I was going on tour to Holland and stuff, and over the course of 4 months I was away virtually the entire time. And yeah, it was scary, you know, having to leave you at home to deal with stuff like that. You know, I'd do everything that I could to sort of, you know, like like I do now. Like if I'm going away somewhere, I'll go out and I'll buy food and try and make my life a little easier for you, so you haven't got to like be worried, especially when you're coming home from work all the time. And you know, back then it was a case of just like living day-to-day life. You know, I'd have to try and make sure everything was in place for you, and you know, it was tough as well. Like I felt guilty pretty much all the time I was away, and sometimes you'd be totally fine, sometimes there'd be issues, and you know, I didn't like being away from you that long in the first place, but then adding a chronic illness into the fray, it makes life a little more sort of guilty. You feel a lot of guilt most times that you're away.
But you did do your best, and you did do everything you could to look after me, so there really was no need for you to feel guilty. Yeah,
but it doesn't matter when you're in my position. I'm sure a lot of blokes probably feel the same way, like with their wives, if they're having trouble, you know, like they just want to make sure they're doing everything right for you, and the wife, obviously like yourself, you know, feels like they are doing everything that they can, but a lot of people still feel like they're not doing everything 100%. They want to do more, and yeah, they just sort of, in my kind of shoes, you just sort of carry a bit of the guilt around with you a lot of the time, just to, I don't know. Life's hard sometimes.
Life is hard sometimes, yeah. And in case listeners didn't pick up on it, I pretty much get treated like a princess. I am a very lucky girl. Where are we? Up to... Yes, did you ever feel more like a carer than a husband?
I never ever felt like a carer, but I kind of had an idea in my head when all this became sort of real and we were going to the doctors about it and everything was starting to happen. I kind of made a decision in my head, if that came to it, then I would be a carer if you needed me to. But I never once in my head thought like that we were at that point yet in life. I kind of planned sort of things, you know, in my head, like thinking, you know, like, well, we'll just change the way we live, like, you know, change certain things about the house and whatever, and I can change the way I work to be able to care for Jess more. And yeah, I sort of had the idea in my head that I'd be able to do it, but I never felt like a carer when things first started getting bad. But, you know, I don't feel like there was a lot of time between being diagnosed with the illness and then when you actually went to see Adam either, you know.
Well, there wasn't, but I had the pain since we first met. I mean, obviously when we first met, I was flooded with lots of lovely serotonin and oxytocin, so
you're living a good life.
Pain was much easier to however, obviously as time went on and the effects of the chemicals wore off, then I sort of slowly started getting worse. And you were looking after me long before I ever got labelled with anything.
Yeah.
But
I suppose that's one of the things to remember, though, is to not sort of class yourself as a carer, because the person in question doesn't want caring for. They want to be able to live their life properly and look after themselves, and they want to have a husband. They don't want a carer. So that was kind of my sort of thinking about it. I mean, I was prepared to become a carer if needs be, but I wanted to be a husband first, primarily.
Yeah, it would be extremely difficult if I started viewing you as a carer or you started viewing yourself as my carer, because I think it would severely affect intimate relations, shall we say.
Well, yeah, no more secrets, that's for sure.
And that's a big part of marriage. So
yeah, no, definitely.
Well, let's talk about some nicer things now. Let's talk about when we first went... Well, when I first found the Fibro Guy online, and we went to see Adam together, and through my recovery process. Let's have a look at that from an outsider's perspective.
For me, when you first found Adam online, and that first day we went for the consultation, I just felt hopeful. It was good to hear someone like Adam talking about his methods, and you know, he's a cool guy to speak to in the first place, but he really made me feel a bit more at home with where we could get to in life, and he gave us a light at the end of the tunnel, which was amazing at that point. You know, all up to that point was literally thinking, oh well, we'd have to manage as we go by, you know, whether like we use the big knives and forks with all the crap items you can get from the hospital. You know,
I'll just bit of background information. When we went to occupational therapy, we were told to get a lot of adapted equipment, adapted pens, adapted knives and forks, foam stuff to basically put round anything small that I would grasp with my hands, and I realise this is really going in the wrong direction, so let's just go for adapted knives and forks.
Yeah, that's fine, they get it.
And move on. Sorry, what were you saying, Jimbo?
I don't know, now you've ruined it. Yeah. No, like at that point in life, all I could think of, you know, like was stuff, like you said, about... Stop laughing, because you're going to ruin the entire thing now. I don't have to press record again.
Sorry. Carry on.
Yeah, up until that point, before we met Adam, I didn't think there was any kind of way out of it. And after we spoke to him and he gave us a full consultation, I was 100% happy with what he could do. He came across really well. And yeah, the idea of getting Jess back to normality was far too good to pass up on. So the journey began.
Now, it's a bit weird for me thinking about the journey now I've been through it. It's kind of like I forget what the process was like in a way, and how everything evolved from that first session. So I don't know, since you were seeing it from the other side, if you have more of a clearer view.
Well, like most of the time, I mean, I don't remember any of the sessions because it's a one-on-one process. So during your sessions, I'd be down the beach having ice cream or cappuccino
sitting
around for an hour.
Slaving away on your jolly holidays over the next week.
We live an hour's drive away from the studio, so I needed something to do for an hour. And I couldn't get home in time to get back as well. So, yeah. But no, over the course of, how many weeks did you do? 8 weeks you did?
Yeah, I think it was 8 weeks.
Over the course of the 8 weeks, there was a very obvious change in attitude and your sort of demeanour towards life, if you will, got a lot more positive. And as time went on, things started to change very slowly but gradually, and you can see things from, like, you know, waking up in the morning. You and I together, when we first got together, we had a very strict regime of waking up after AM. Make sure that it was afternoon time.
Well, you were a drummer and I was a student. That's general student drummer rules.
Well, exactly, but it was hard to shake off because I carried on being a drummer, and then you got into the chronic pain, and then you would usually be up with insomnia or other kind of ailments during the night a lot of the time. So we spent a lot of mornings in bed, and then our day would start very late on, and we'd be up till very late on the night. Stuff like that began to change when you started seeing Adam, and you had a good routine coming in. Like, we started with your foundations, like the cold showers and stuff. Had to do that first thing on the morning, and you were excited. Even stuff like that, you were excited about doing it because I think you knew in your head that it was going to get you somewhere positive in life. So, yeah, I know you've tried to get me involved in that kind of thing, like doing the cold showers, which I've strictly said no to on several occasions.
He refuses to tell me if he has any niggles now.
Well,
in case I torture him.
I'm not going to get tortured in your studio. I'm just going to live with the pain.
We don't really torture people.
Yeah. Take that out the show, in fact.
That was a joke. Good. So, recovery all good?
I'd say so. Here we are today, and you are totally fine.
I am. And do you feel things have changed between us?
Not necessarily changed, but yeah, there's some aspects of life have definitely gotten better, because obviously now I'm not feeling as guilty, if you like, when I go places, and I don't think you're feeling as guilty about worrying about how I'm feeling. So, you know, we can quite easily go ahead through life now, and like we can book the things that we want to do, and 99% of the time we can do them unless something bad, terrible happens. But
you mean like COVID-19?
Things like COVID-19, for instance, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, but like we'll get past that. Don't worry about it. And then yeah, I feel the whole thing's been a really huge positive thing, and it's got you to a great point in life now, and you know your body better, and you're able to continue in life now and live it pain-free. So what's not to like about it? That's my question.
Well, yes. However, there are some couples who go through recovery and then end up divorced because it changes the relationship negatively.
Really?
Yes. Fortunately for us, we are on the opposite side of that coin. We were happy together, I believe, when I was in chronic pain. We were happy together when I went through recovery, and we're even happier together now.
Most certainly.
And nice. And we have a nice, strong relationship because we know when bad things come our way, we can face them together.
Definitely. Well, that's one of the things to remember. If you are feeling so, like, if you're feeling, I don't know, guilty, or you're having any anger issues or any kind of problems that you're having, like while your partner's going through issues like chronic pain, the big thing to remember is communication. Talk to them about it. Don't bottle anything up, because that's when problems start arising. You know, there's been incidents in the past where we've had issues like that because of lack of communication, but, you know, that's when problems can arise, and as long as you just stay, you know, just communicate together, that's the key for me.
That is very true. We did, when you first went away for a long period of time, we didn't communicate very well. And it did lead to issues in our relationship.
Yeah.
But we've learned from that now, so please learn from our mistake.
That's the thing.
Communicate.
Exactly. That's what it's all about, and I feel that we are much stronger and in a much better position now because we do communicate, and that's how everyone should be. Any couple should learn from that sort of rule.
Well, thank you for doing this podcast with me. I know it's been a bit of a personal one for us both, which feels very strange to me. And I just hope that listeners out there can take something positive away from it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you next time.